Hi guys, so this video is going to be for my bigger kids, and we are going to pick our favorite animal this week and draw it, and then next week we will be shading. Now you will probably get some shading in as you are drawing this, and that is fine, but we're going to do most of our shading hopefully next week, or at the very least you can get as much drawn today as you can in about 45-50 minutes, and then you can finish it during our next class time. So you need to pick your favorite animal, and then I would suggest going and finding a picture of it on your device by going to Google and searching up that animal's name. So here I have chosen the quokka or quokka. It is actually a Australian animal. It is a marsupial. And it is super cute because a lot of the times when you see them, they are smiling super happily, or they look very happy, and they're very photogenic, and they're perfect for selfies, and they are really popular because of that. So he is very cutesy. I found two pictures that I liked for him, this one and this one, because this one I couldn't really see his body. I wanted to make sure that I was getting kind of the same body shape. Now you do need to find a realistic picture, so I don't want, if you're a really big fan of pandas, that's fine, but you can't find like cartoon pandas or clip art. We are going to be shading on this, and I want it to look more realistic. So try to find a real picture. If you can't find a real picture of the animal you like, then you need to pick a different animal. Now, I also need you to not choose things that are very smooth, like snakes. I would suggest sticking to something that is furry, and if you can't find some, like if you like things like lizards and stuff like that, if you can find a nice lizard, like I don't know, just most lizards would probably be okay, but something that has a bit of a jagged edge to it. So the fur here is going to be very zigzaggy or very rough, so that is going to that's going to change that outline. So I'm going to get into that more in just a minute. So I did use these two pictures. So again, you're going to Google, type in your favorite animal's name, or you can just look up different animals and find a picture that you like. We're not going to be coloring this, or we won't be using much color. So you will only be using pencil and eraser this week and next week. So you do need to be sure that you have a sharp pencil. You don't need 3 pencils. I'm just showing as an example. So if you look at these 2 pencils, hopefully you can see that this one on the top is very dull. When you're drawing, a sharp pencil is best. So if your pencil does start to get dull, I would definitely suggest that you sharpen it and keep it kind of sharp. So I'm actually using my mechanical pencil, which you can get sharper just by clicking the end. It is up to you. I don't mind what type of pencil you use, so long as it's not a colored pencil. Even a black or gray colored pencil isn't going to work very well because it's not going to erase, and it's not going to blend nicely like a pencil, like a graphite pencil will. So make sure you're using a pencil, like a regular drawing or writing pencil. So what we need to be talking about, and I'll come back to this next week, is value. So you need to make sure that you are not just sticking in one area. We'll talk about this with shading much more next week, but just understand that there's not just a black and white here when you're shading. You're going to have all of these different grays in between as well. So I'm going to go ahead and go over to our picture here. And I'm sure it's not much of a shock, but I chose a corgi to draw today for you guys. Let me see if I can get this a little smaller. And I'm going to change out our paper to a brand new piece of paper. And when you are drawing, again, I suggest starting with your simple shapes. So your circles, squares, rectangles, triangles, ovals. Those are your basic shapes that you learn like in kindergarten and pre-K. So those are the ones that keep it simple. So when I look at this puppy, I see a big circle or oval for the shape of his head, triangles for his ears, and maybe like a square for his snout. So with a dog, that snout is going to come off of the face some. So whether you do a puppy, a fox, or something else, even horses have that long snout. This is a good way to approach that. So I start with, again, you need to remember we're drawing big. So I draw a big circle, and you can tell that those are all kind of like scribble scrabbly because I'm just kind of getting the shape in, or how big I want this to be. And then I'm going to put that other triangle over here. And it doesn't have to be perfect yet. This is just to get the shapes in. Now, for his snout, what I was talking about earlier, I'm going to put kind of a square here on the front, and it might actually start to already look maybe like a cougar or a lion or a panther or something like that, especially with those big triangle ears. So this would be a great way to do one of those animals, or even a fox, because corgis look kind of fox-like with those big ears. So this is the shape for his snout, and then his nose is going to be on that snout. So I would say that's kind of a triangle. That's kind of a boxier, square, rectangle shape up on top of it. And then that line comes out from the bottom, and it goes over for his mouth. And then we can clean up some of this. So definitely make sure you are pressing lightly when you're drawing this, because you're going to be erasing if you're doing it this way with the simple shapes approach. Now, if you don't want to do it with simple shapes and you just want to draw by looking, that is fine, but you need to be sure that you are being careful to make it look realistic and not letting it get cartoony. And a lot of the thing that's going to make it look more realistic is when we start shading. So it might look cartoony even at the start here. So this is like his bottom lip there, and then this line here is going to be like for the bottom of his jaw. And again, we can get our eraser. I like to use a big eraser at the starting point here, since I'm going to be erasing long lines, because that's just helping me to get that shape for his snout or muzzle or whatever you want to call that part of the puppy. We can put in some circles for his eyes. This eye is actually covered up, so I'm going to go ahead and get kind of a circle or oval shape for his big paw there, and then coming down that rectangle basically for his arm. So again, these are just placeholders, kind of like a bookmark in your favorite book. You're going to use these for later. And again, since this paw and arm covers up everything under there, we can erase everything inside of that shape. So then I get my eraser back for that. And let's see, his other paw is about right here, so kind of a big oval. And then it comes down to kind of a rectangle shape. And then his belly, because he's laying on his back. Now, if you draw this big enough, you don't have to worry about drawing a background. If you're drawing teeny tiny still, you're going to need to draw some other things. I would honestly prefer that you not draw small and just start over if you find yourself drawing too small. So that's why I always make sure that first shape I draw is typically like the biggest shape. So his head, his ears are the things that I really started off with, because they were very, very big in our picture, and I want them very big in our drawing. I'm going to make his ear a little bit bigger here. I'm going to erase this line because I like it coming out this way a little bit further.
Good afternoon, Knowlton.
All right. So here is a shape for the opening of his ear. I would say that's kind of like a triangle as well. It's just, again, another little placeholder. All right. So then we can go in and pay a little more attention to that eye. Kind of a sad face curve on the top of it. A diagonal, and not quite a big curve like a smile curve, but still kind of curved. So not straight horizontal. Just like that. You can see just a little bit of the white of the eye here. And then a nice bright reflection of the white there. It's a little hard to see, but it is kind of the dark pupil right there. Now we're going to be shading, like I mentioned before, so we will color that in with our pencil. If you wanted to, you could go ahead and color or shade it in with your pencil right now, just so you don't get distracted and forget what that was. But that's up to you. You don't have to do much shading. If you end up doing a little shading today, that's fine, because it does make it a little easier to keep track of things when you're drawing, but you don't have to get that in there. So this oval that I got here for his eye is actually a pretty good shape for where it's lighter around his eye. And I'm just doing kind of these zigzags for hair. So just kind of curve. So you see how it curves some and then zigzag. And that's going to be a perfect line to use for the outline. So the outline is this line on the outside part. That's why it's called the outline. And if you look closely at the outline for the dog, especially on the top of his head, you can see some of those little hairs kind of poking out. And that is a good way to show its texture, which means how it feels. So showing that it is fuzzy. So you don't want a smooth line, because that will make it look more cartoonish. So make sure that you are, and I like to turn my paper a little bit for this, doing just like little zigzags along the edge there. Make sure that you're not doing it like this, because that's not going to look nice. So curvy zigzags like this are going to look a lot more like hair or an organic shape. This is just going to look like you're rushing and you're making a mess. It's the same when we draw hair. Instead of like drawing a person's hair, like with trying to draw every single line and it gets really messy, what you should do instead is draw like the outside line and the inside line where it's next to the head, like that. So this is going to make it look way much more like hair than doing 50 billion straight up and down lines. So make sure that you're doing a curvy kind of zigzag if you've got a hairy animal that you're drawing. I should have erased that line first. All right. So all I want you to get done today is kind of the basic drawing of your animal. Make sure that it is big. If you have 2 eyes visible, make sure you draw 2. So I was kind of lucky here because mine only has 1, but his paw is up there. So I will have to kind of draw his little like beans on his paw there. Let's see. Get his nose holes in there, his nostrils, kind of a triangle shape. Again, all I'm doing is just going back and looking at the picture over and over. I'm not like, I would never ask you to like, okay, imagine how a dog looks. So having references is a good idea when you're learning to draw, because then it takes a little bit of stress off of you. Um, and it's not an expectation that you know exactly what a dog looks like or exactly what a corgi would look like. So even on this line here with the white part of his snout there, it is a zigzag line. So I'm going to erase that kind of smooth line. It was going this direction, and then again, just kind of a zigzaggy line. So just take your time, do your best, pay attention to your picture. You should all be going to Google and finding a picture. I think all of third, fourth, and fifth grade does have a laptop, so you should be able to look up an animal picture. If you can't find an animal picture, I'll see if I can put this corgi picture and maybe the quokka picture, so you at least have those two to choose from if you for some reason can't do Google searches. So you're going to see me erasing a lot as I try and like mess with it, changing it. It takes a while to make it look good, so don't rush yourself. You have time, and we're going to be finishing this next week, adding a whole lot more shading. So a lot of this kind of stuff going on, diagonal lines, and blending. You can blend with your finger to get some color and shading in there. And I'll talk about that a whole lot more next week. But this week is just to make sure that you get those shapes, those simple shapes, and you get pretty much like a nice starting point for what we're going to be shading in. So I would definitely want to add more to his paws. Let's get that bean there. A little bit of his claw that you can see. So if you are not good at drawing lightly, I probably would not suggest you try this simple shape approach. But if you aren't a very good artist, you haven't learned a lot yet, and you're still kind of like uncomfortable and not really, not really comfortable drawing, then I would suggest you do your best to draw lightly so you can start with those simple shapes, because it does make it a lot easier. These beans and paw are kind of covered up with like a whole lot of hair, so hopefully we'll be able to make that look more like a paw some when we shade it more next time. I've never drawn, well, I definitely have never drawn this picture, so I don't think I've ever drawn a dog in this pose. If you aren't good at drawing hands, I would strongly suggest that you not do an animal that has hands. So I would say stick with animals like this. If you're not really comfortable drawing hands, and they can be really hard, do not try like things like raccoons or things that have those little hands, because that will be very difficult. So I'm going to do a little shading here because I want to have like that, again, another like bookmark, a little placeholder telling me, reminding me that it gets really dark in this area. So I'm just kind of coloring it in there. When you're shading, and again, we'll talk about this more next time, make sure that you're going kind of the direction the hair was. So if I went left to right like this, it would start to look kind of bad and not really realistic, because the hair is kind of going at a diagonal there. So try and, when you're shading or when you're filling it in, make sure you're going in the direction of the hair. It'll definitely make it look a little more like hair that way. It'll just look a lot better. This is probably what's bothering me most here. This smooth line is not at all smooth on that picture. Hopefully that'll start. Yeah, there we go. That's starting to look a lot better now. And again, over here, if you want to, you can kind of shade in those nostrils because they are very dark. Again, make sure you're not shading too much. Don't get too distracted. I know it's hard because I'm obviously getting a little distracted. All right. So I don't want this video to go too much longer. Again, you're just trying to get some little placeholders so you know where the body is, where his arms are, because a lot of the realism when you're drawing this will come when you shade. So make sure you spend a little bit of time on this so we can get some of it done, and then we will talk about shading a whole lot more next lesson on our next video. I'm going to go ahead and get this kind of line going up for the shape of his little white mark. And again, I'm not trying to draw every single strand of hair. I'm just trying to get kind of a curvy little line there to just tell, just so you can see what the texture is. Never try and draw every single strand of hair. It will not look good. It'll just be too messy. All right. I think that's a pretty good stopping point there. Let me see. We can get a little bit, because he's got the dark part of his hair, and then he's got this white hair. And when we're shading, that white area isn't all going to be white, because if you look under his paw some and under his jaw here, it gets a little bit darker. So we will want a little bit of shading there. It's not just because you know that it's white there doesn't mean that there isn't a value there, if that makes sense. Like if you decide to draw a panda, just because you know he's black and white, the white part of his hair is still going to have shading, because it's dependent on where the light is hitting. So with this one, I would probably say a lot of the light is coming down this direction and maybe kind of down straight like this. So that is why under here, his head is going to be casting this shadow here. And then a lot of, definitely in here, it gets really dark. But again, Miss Mobley's getting distracted talking about shading. And we're not on that yet, Miss Mobley. Oh my goodness. So I think this is probably a pretty good stopping point. So make sure that you get all of the basic shapes for his body, the head, the ears, anything else for your animal. Maybe you can get the outline a little more broken and hairy looking like I did here. If you do skip some areas and you want to add more hairiness to it next time, that is fine. But make sure that you spend at least, I would say maybe, hopefully it won't take you more than 5 or 10 minutes to find your picture. And then about 40 minutes, maybe 35 or 40 minutes drawing today, and then we'll finish the rest of it next time. So you will want to make sure that you save that picture for us to use for our next class. So don't lose it, or make sure that you know how to find it again. So I'm going to go back to our quokka here, and you can tell that I have all of the shapes in. I have done, again, a little shading, but I haven't gone too overboard yet because I just kind of needed those placeholders so I know where everything's going to go. And next class, we're going to be adding a whole lot more hair, a whole lot more shading, darks and lights, to get that realistic look for our animal. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. I can't wait to see the animal that you decide to draw. Again, make sure it's not something simple like a snake or something that doesn't have a lot of details. It can't be a cartoon picture. It needs to be a picture of a real animal. And just do your best and make sure you're drawing big, of course. And take a picture of it and send it to me on Schoology or Class Dojo. So we'll finish it next time, and I can't wait to see all of your work. Bye, guys.